This is Henk. He's the founder of the association, and here is Wolfgang. He's the current president of the association, and I'm Philip. I'm the director of the association. So please, Henk, take it away.
There's a little problem with the timeline. He was saying 18 years. In fact, we started in 1992, so this is the 20th year. So we can celebrate it this year, but also next year we can say it's 20 years since we started. So,
Oh, jeez. That's it.
so how do I do this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I talk about 20 years. I've been coming to Silicon Valley since the early 60s. And this sign is the first thing when I come back from Europe and I'm driving on Highway 101, I still find this sign, MPEX. It was also my first design project at CERN, using MPEX tape units. So that sign is still there, so the valley is still there. There are other things which reminds me when I come to the valley again. It's always almost in the same week. It's always in May. And there's always, at Stanford, there's always the powwow. And that was I went to the opening ceremony on Friday. And again, the timeline is very interesting too, because they were referring to, of course, what happened in the last few weeks in Afghanistan. But they said, you know, for you, it's 9/11. For us, it's 1492. And there's always, when we come, is always Pledge Week at KQED. So it's very difficult for me to... And there's BayCHI Breakers also. And we, as a group, we participated twice to BayCHI Breakers. With all our clothes on, but... So, the concept of the tour. There's a lot of things have changed also in the valley. We will talk about that. But the concept of the tour hasn't changed very much. It's still mainly IT oriented. Originally it was developed as a university course because I spent most of my career at CERN in Geneva. Also I worked at SLAC. And I started to work on, to teach at an American university in Geneva. And I thought, what is the best course I can do? And that's taking people to Silicon Valley. Of course, I wanted to come back here every year, so it was an excuse. Usually we have 12 to 18 people on the tour. We stay in the heart of Silicon Valley. We stay in Palo Alto. We still stay in the same hotel. And, the concept is very simple, 2 or 3 visits per day. In fact, today we went to Google and in the afternoon to Microsoft. You know that Microsoft has now bought Skype. And you know that the name will change. You know that? It will be called Skip. So, first day, we always go to Stanford. We're staying very close to Stanford, and we have visits the first day at the university. Like today was Large Enterprise Day. We have Startup Day, and so forth. So we have different themes. We also have, almost every year, we have a theme. This year it's called Clouds in the Valley. And that's cloud computing. It's also, are there still clouds in the valley? By the way, that's something interesting also. The change between Silicon Valley and Switzerland. We now have the weather of Silicon Valley. We have never had such a beautiful spring. It has been warm since February, and we haven't had rain for 3 months, so we come in here and it's cold. So why are we coming to Silicon Valley, and why are we still coming there? For us, it's still the reference. It's the people, the technology, of course, the money, the craziness of Silicon Valley. In Switzerland, things are much more serious. Here, they do it. They take risk. There's the entrepreneurship, the innovation, the networking. Although people networking is has a little bit changed. Today, when we came in the early days, there were always events where you could meet, and of course this is the ultimate one to do. But in Palo Alto, there were always networking events where we could go. Now people, they do the networking on Facebook or on other social networks. For us, it's still the okay to fail mentality we have here. It's a fact, it's almost a must to fail. You learn by failing. And there's so much going on here. So, who did we bring in the past? And Wolfgang and Philip will talk about it a little bit, about some people who had some success. We have mostly IT. In the beginning, we had a lot of students. Today, we have only one student in the group. There are IT managers. We have also done tours for government officials. That was very interesting sometimes. Journalists, investors, and so forth. Silicon Valley has gone through many waves, almost sea changes. In the United States, we learned that at Stanford this yesterday, there has been 11 recessions since 1945. We have experienced in the Valley 2 major recessions in the 90s, but also, of course, in the dot-com bubble burst.
Sorry, I'm told you should.
So it's okay in my hand. Okay, and the last one a few years ago. What did we see in the first years? We saw, of course, the big upcoming of the PCs and Windows, which were developed here originally, and we made visit to Apple's Sun SDI. But SDI, of course, has disappeared. We have seen so many companies which have disappeared. Digital, for instance, was a company we visited many, many times because they had a very, very nice research lab here in Palo Alto. And we remember that in the early 90s, the PAIX was in fact the first big internet switch. Even traffic from Europe went through Palo Alto. I don't know what has happened, if there is still a switch left in Palo Alto, but that building downtown near University was very interesting. Of course, we saw the first search engines also there, the Alta Vista. So from the internet boom became the web commerce. And we visited companies like Netscape. In fact, and E-Trade and eBay, these were the later companies in the 90s. We saw also many exciting products like PDAs. Do you remember the Newton, the EO? Of course, we bought those devices when we were here, and they were amazing, but too early. Network computer. We saw the first network computer, it was at Sun Microsystems, I think. It was much too early. You need a cloud computing really to use a network computing. And then fiber is good for you. Palo Alto was going to be wired with fiber. It's now only happening, I believe, today they are really putting fiber to the home. There was too much fiber everywhere. Anyway, so there were a lot of ideas which were too early, but that's the valley. The valley always comes with innovation, and sometimes much later it becomes a reality. So we have experienced the very beginning of Silicon Valley and the growth of Silicon Valley in the 90s. But can it be copied? Of course, everywhere they think that there is a valley. And there are valleys, but they are not at all like Silicon Valley. There is only one Silicon Valley in our opinion. There are wireless valleys in Finland, for instance, or Telecom Valley in Sweden, or in the south of France. Very often these valleys, they have only one idea, one technology, and they come and go. What we have in Europe today is more like techno parks, we call them, where technology is developed. Switzerland is full of them, and Wolfgang will tell us a little bit about that. So what is really the difference today between what we saw in the early 90s and today? Silicon Valley has changed. When we came in the 90s, everything was done in Silicon Valley. We could even visit companies where they were really building equipment. And today, there is no manufacturing, or hardly any manufacturing in Silicon Valley. When we came in the 90s, there was a lot of research. For instance, HP had HP labs, which were huge research facilities. Research and development has gone down. Now, research development is done by startups. And the startups, they get bored. So, we have also experienced quite a few statements during the years. Of course, the most famous one is Moore's Law. And I think Moore's Law has that the computer capacity multiplies every 18 months. We have Metcalfe's law. It's the number of interactions in the network also explodes. And of course, Metcalfe, we met him at one of the meetings in Silicon Valley, and where he made the statement, not to us, but he repeated it to us, that he would eat his statement that the internet would collapse. And that was in 1995. And I think Bob Metcalfe has eaten, really has eaten. I think that was very courageous to do, to eat that statement. And then, of course, we have the Negroponte switch, which is that everything which is wireless will become wired, and what is wired becomes wireless. And I think there's even another switch, is that everything which is asynchronous will become synchronous, and what is synchronous becomes asynchronous. We see that with email, we see that with messages which we send. Instant messaging is asynchronous, while telephone is something synchronous. We are seeing the end of television. We will, I saw a demonstration recently, or a few days ago, of TV on demand. We are not, except for the news, we don't need to watch TV. Of course, events like sports events, and of course the wedding of William and Kate are things you want to see directly. So here are a few memories of the tour. This Doug Engelbart, IDEO, early days, visit to Apple. Here you see this was a visit of the government officials from Geneva. And they were in the building which is now Google, which was Silicon Graphics. Things have changed in the valley. So I will now ask Wolfgang to continue to the middle years. So you're talking about the thousands.
Thank you very much, Henk. So it is obviously really a small world. Dan mentioned the monastery of St. Gallen before. I'm living in that town, maybe 200 meters away from the monastery, and a lot of the documents they have, it's already digitized, and you can see it on the internet. So I will tell you only 3 little stories describing the Middle Ages or the mature period of the organization. And I will start with the topic we have chosen. So if you want to attract senior management or technologists for such a tour, it is important to choose the right topic, a good one. And in our case, good one means that it is a trend or a development in its early phase, and it has the potential to change the way the business is done in IT industry. And this year, it was not really hard. If you look at the Gartner hype cycle, you already are familiar with that, you will find cloud computing. And I will show you the companies we will see. Topic is clouds in the valley. We always try to find a good mix between large companies like Google, like Microsoft and VMware, and smaller ones and startups, and Stanford is also usually on the first day to really give the participants a 360-degree views about the things which are going on in the Silicon Valley. So the next story is about things, or we thought that it's more interesting for you to hear what happened to the ideas we picked up here in the Silicon Valley in Switzerland. And I'm working for the Swiss Institute of Technology in Zurich. It's the ETH. It's the biggest technical university in Switzerland. This is the main campus located in downtown Zurich. This is the campus Hönkerberg outside of the city. It's also a very nice environment. And ETH is founded in 1855, and we have 17,000 students, about 400 professors, and 9,800 people working for ETH. Expenditure is about 1.5 billion US dollar a year. And the ETH is very proud of the Nobel Prize laureates, and it is very proud of the good infrastructure we have. And as IT persons, we are also part of the game, and to set up services which are innovative, that's a real challenge for us. And so the story starts in 1998, so a long time ago. And for a university, about 20 or 25% of the people are coming and leaving each year. So identity management is a huge topic for us. And we had a company called Broad Vision on the program in 1998. And we had a presentation of the CTO, and he talked about the importance of identity management, role management, and they are starting with a product which was originally targeted for web shopping or for web shops. And I was here with a colleague, and we really recognized that the ingredients they used for their system, a web browser, database backend system, and automatic processes to set that all up, was the right thing for us to do for this identity management stuff. This is not very exciting today, but it was more than 10 years ago. And today we have Facebook and Google, and we can really see what does it mean if you can manage profiles or the identity of your user. So the company is still in operation, Broad Vision, it's in the valley there. And this is the website of yesterday, of today. And this was the website in 1998. I used the Internet Archive to look it up. It's interesting to see the difference or the advances in web design. And our system is still in operation. And the idea we got in 1998 is still alive. And we were one of the first universities to set up such a system in that scale. And it really helped us to implement a lot of other electronic services which were based on that kind of user management system. So this was story number 2. Story number 3 will tell you the story of a young man, Mark Amann. He joined the tour about 2 years ago. He worked for a web development company in Zurich, and he won for his company the Swiss Web Award. This is a very famous prize. And his boss was on the tour several years ago, and yeah, we had someday a discussion, and I suggested to send Mark as a bonus for his good work to the Silicon Valley tour, because I was interested to attract participants. And his boss thought, yes, that's a good idea, and he sent Mark to the tour. And he was really very fascinated by the Silicon Valley and the Silicon Valley spirit. Then he wrote in his blog, I lost my fear of failing, I lost my fear of not being perfect, and I lost my fear of the Silicon Valley companies. And at the end, he came home and he quit his job and started his own company. So his boss was not really amused. And since several weeks, we are already talking to each other. And Mark is doing a good job, and I think his company is on the right way. So this was my short little talk, and Philip will tell about even more interesting things about one of the most successful startups in Switzerland.
So I had many thoughts of what I could talk about, and I dismissed many of them. This is going to be very personal and very anecdotal. So where did it start for me? I came on really late to the association. So it was my first trip was 4 years ago. I just joined the association as a normal participant, coming along for the tour. And what I saw here, I was so excited about it. I think Henk picked up on that. I was kind of radiating positive energy. And at the very last day of the tour, he asked me, you know, Philip, do you actually want to take over the association? You know, I'm actually, I've reached a certain age, and I'm looking for someone to carry it on. So here I am. It was really exciting tour. I mean, it's a great mix. We come here just 1 week. It's a very intense week. it's the people who come along on the tour. So it's always a great group of people. You know, get to know people in Switzerland, back home in Switzerland, and interact with them during the week. But it's also the great places, you know, like Park here. I mean, I knew about it, and it's great to stand here tonight. And also the technology. So as you can tell, there's one image here of like Tesla. We visited Tesla in a very early stage. We saw their early prototype. So it's very exciting to see like these new developments when they're really fresh. And also the networking. So on my very first tour here, I went actually off, like we have a fully packed program, but I actually went off to do more in the evenings. So when we were in San Francisco, I went over to Adaptive Path, and they had this event on. It was actually Scott Birkin, that's him there, talking about his book, The Myths of Innovation. And just the sort of discussions going on there, and actually meeting lots of interaction designers. I haven't mentioned this so far, but actually I'm a trained interaction designer. I studied this in 2000 in London. But actually having this environment where there's other colleagues and you can talk about your subject, and so I was really excited about all this. Also, one of those visits then was we met Luke Homan, who has this book, Innovation Games, and it was all about co-creation and collaborating on design. So this really hit home with me. It was a really fun workshop, and learning like these technologies, these methods was really exciting to me. So that was kind of the start with the association. But when I was thinking about this talk, I thought, well, you know, okay, this is the start for me with the association, but where did it really start? I mean, you know, why am I here, and why am I coming back? And I think it starts, the story really starts earlier. For me, my first contact with electronics is this device. I don't know, how many in the audience actually know this device or had one? Okay, so it's quite a few. So when I was 5 years old, my father brought this from the States. And, you know, it has this thing where you spell, so, you know, type A, L, T, so I kind of learned English with this, and this is actually the reason why I'm so, you know, I can speak English so well, is this device. Well, not really, but so this was my first computer actually when I was 10 years old. It's a computer that I think hardly anyone actually knows. It's called ETHZ Sorcerer, and this computer was actually just produced for 2 years over here in the States. I think they started in 78, and then it wasn't really a big success, and they stopped producing it over here. They just said like, oh no, that wasn't a success, let's just drop it. But funnily enough, in Europe, it had a much longer lifetime. So my father actually bought one of these and got it over. And there were several groups, like user groups in Europe, and I think also in Australia, that used this computer for much longer than it was actually produced. And I think there was a UK importer, and then they carried on making like add-ons to the computer and so on. So that's also kind of an illustration of there are things that start here and then have their own life elsewhere on the planet. I thought that was interesting. So, of course, you know, I had this computer. So what did I do actually with that computer? Well, this is what I actually used it for. So again, okay, so this is, you know, looking back at my own history. So when I was 5, I was introduced to this technology coming from over here. But then again, I think it really started earlier. I think it started with my father. So my father was, he's someone who really likes, he's a tinker, I think. He really likes to take things apart. He's really curious about them. So when he gets a new gadget or a new piece of technology, the first thing he does is he takes it apart and he wants to understand it, and he tinkers around with it. And at the time, he was interested in photography and filmmaking, so he would take, I always knew, like, he had always these things lying around, these gadgets and things, and taken apart. But he was also a filmmaker, and actually, he was filmmaker for 15 years. And his fascination with filmmaking actually started here over in the US. It was in the end of 60s, I think 68 even, 69, quite an exciting time to be in the US, in New Mexico actually. And he was really fascinated by he got his fascination with cameras and like the first actually portable video camera. He brought it over to Europe with him. So I think, yeah, for me that sort of had an effect because his fascination then later, had an effect on myself as well. So actually the reason why I later had this computer to play games with was my father had actually bought this machine for word processing because he was a filmmaker and he was writing film scripts, screenplays. And at the time you would do that, either with hand or with a sort of a typewriter, with a mechanical or electronic typewriter. So he was interested in the capabilities of this because you could actually store the text and edit it. And actually that device was actually very good at that. It was specialized it had a built-in word processing and you could attach it to a regular TV screen. He didn't have a printer. Printers at those time were really expensive. So he could type in his scripts and he could display them on the screen, but that wasn't practical. He would need to talk to other people about the script, so he couldn't just have them come and look at the screen. So he was looking for a possibility to actually get the text out, so to speak. And so he started researching. I mean, he was back in Switzerland, and he started researching of ways of how to actually get the text out of it. And there was another Swiss person who actually made a great business of combining new technology with existing technology. And the existing technology was just electronic typewriters. So in offices, people had electronic typewriters. And people at the time were actually quite scared of computers. So he figured out, and this is also speaks sort of, a story for interaction design. He said, let's work with what people know already. They have these machines, the typewriters, and they're used to them. So let's just sort of secretly sneak on, the computer and attach it onto that typewriter. So he actually made this little interface. It was sort of a little interface with cables that would sort of get the signals from the keystrokes that when people were writing, and they would sort of store away these keystrokes onto the computer. And then it was saved there, and they could, edit it. And the benefit is that they could then hit a special key combination. They could print it again from the typewriter. So the typewriter was actually the keyboard and the printer. So it was kind of the input-out device, and the computer was just a storage device. On the left, this is Roland Reichling. He was the person who came up with this idea and made really great business. They were called a Twix typer, and they were sold all over the world. And he made really a good business with that. So what happened next? So my father had actually met Roland, to solve his problem of getting, hooking up basically an electric typewriter to his computer to be able to print his screenplays. What happened next? We had another new technology, Laserdisc, and this was also very popular in sort of filmmaking circles because the Laserdisc was used to store films and to display them. So one day my father saw actually someone working with a Laserdisc somewhere in the basement on some software. And the software was a program for hotels, so like a catalog to show people potential clients, tourists, what the hotel rooms look like. So it was kind of a database of images, photographs of hotels. They were stirring this. So it got my father to think, like, oh, wow, you can sort of hook this up with, computer, and you can store lots of images on this. This is interesting. So he actually had this idea, the hotel catalog, I'm not really interested in that, but what if we had actually a phone directory, so we could put like all the phone numbers onto a disk like that, and then make it searchable. So, he had seen that, and he had like this idea. And he thought like, wow, the more he thought about it, he said like, wow, I think I really have a business case here. We have Switzerland, it has a population of 7 million people, and actually in Switzerland, having your address and phone in the phone book was mandatory. So sort of it's not the case in many other countries, but in Switzerland actually every single person is in the phone book. Like their address and their phone is in there. So he said, that's great. We have the records of a whole country. And these records, they need regular updating because people move about. So you always need, this data changes. So if we sell this phone book, electronic phone book to people, they will need to get an update because, the data changes all the time. And he thought like, okay, but if I get someone, once a customer, I will always have them as a customer. I'll have repeat customers. So he thought like, I think my idea is actually worth pursuing. But I mean, he was a filmmaker at the time, and he didn't have money. Almost no money at all. So he didn't have any money to invest into this idea, and he also didn't have the data, and he was not a programmer, and it was kind of lacking programmers in Switzerland. So he kind of started working on these topics. So what he actually did is he actually went to Swisscom, the national telecom of Switzerland, and he actually talked to them about his idea, and he said, would you give me your data, your phone records for my project? And they actually, he's quite good, he's quite convincing at talking, so he actually convinced them to give him the data for a pilot project for a nominal fee, like really small fee. So he kept working on this idea, and then actually he remembered Roland Reichlin, who had made this business with Twix typers. So he felt like he should get Roland as a partner, because Roland actually has money. So he could invest into his idea. And so on the left-hand side, that's Roland. On the right-hand side, that's actually my father. And it took him a while to convince Roland of his idea, but eventually, he got him around. So he had some money. And what is also very important is Roland actually had access to the market. Because Roland has already a huge customer base of customers who were buying his Twix typers. So that was really valuable. They were a really good combination. So my father actually got a little bit of money to come over here to the States to get the final bit, the final missing puzzle piece was the technology. So he actually came over here, and he attended the International Conference on CD-ROM technology. It was organized by Microsoft. So he came here, and he showed me, he still has it. It was like this really thick book about CD-ROM technology. And so he came over here and learned about the technology side of things. And then 1 year later, his idea was actually materialized. So in ETHZ, it was the first release on CD-ROM of the Swiss phone books, all of the Swiss phone books on CD-ROM. So these are some screenshots from the user interface. So you could, it was kind of a search interface. You could search for names and places and combine them. And later on, they also added mapping. So it's like the yellow pages and the white pages but you could also find locations, geolocation data, where, find out where the address is, and also routing. They added that later on. And it was also quite an innovative product for its time. So it was actually the first phone book of a whole country in Europe, where they had all the people in there. And it was also the first geolocation application with aerial photographs. This was in '92. And I actually got aerial photographs from Swissair, the national airline. They had like all these aerial photographs, and he had like quite a few students working on fitting them all together and sort of photoshopping them and sort of smoothing out all the tiles and stuff. And yeah, but they got it all to work. So the CD-ROM Twixel was a huge success. It was a best-selling CD-ROMs for many years, and it's still sold today, actually, despite of the data being available on the internet. So nowadays, the Swisscom, of course, they have the source of all this data. They publish it on the internet on a website called LocalCH, which is, by the way, a startup of one of the participants who was on the tour with us. And the interesting thing is that it's still sold today, and the reason for that is that some small companies, they completely block access to the internet. Because, well, I don't know, various reasons, maybe porn or Facebook. But so in some companies, they just don't allow internet access. So they have like this CD spinning in the basement and have sort of local local network access to the phone book. And sort of just to sort of make a connection to things that are happening over here, we noticed that clean tech is a big upcoming topic here in the valley, and actually on our tours. We include more and more visits also to sort of to companies and startups in the clean tech area. And actually my father, he actually invests in his own house. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. So this is actually our house, well, their house, my parents' house, and they got this huge thing, and they're actually drilling a hole and putting in tubes, and yeah, they're kind of using geothermal energy now to heat their house. So this was really my personal story. I wanted to share with you about sort of something that was inspired from over here, and made is kind of a successful story of what actually it enabled over in Switzerland. Last thing, I would like to talk a bit about some new developments that I see. And Wolfgang and Henk already talked about this a little bit, is that the Silicon Valley is changing. And I think one of the things is that there's this sort of really density of things going on here. There's the money here, there's really lots of skilled people here in a really small, on a small area. But I think with globalization, I think that is changing. And I actually attended a workshop at Stanford University after one of our tours, and at Stanford, and it was a workshop sort of thinking about this topic of global innovation networks. So what is the changing role of the Silicon Valley in times of, well, mainstream internet and a sort of more globalized world? And I think there is a change happening which is quite profound, is that before, the Silicon Valley was really a magnet for people all over the world. And it was a really fascinating place, and it still is. But it attracted people to actually come here and move here and make their ideas and their visions come true here. But I think that it might be spreading now to more and more to all over the world. And one sign of this for me is this concept of co-working. I don't know, how many in the audience are actually familiar with this concept of co-working? Okay, some of you, not quite, okay. So actually in San Francisco, you have co-working spaces. One of them is called Citizen Space, and the other one is called The Hub. And we also have a hub in Switzerland. And the concept of this is actually, basically it's just shared infrastructure. So they cater for freelance designers or freelance programmers, freelance developers, basically information workers that just need a laptop to do their work. And you can get sort of a flat rate. You pay, let's say, $30, and then you're allowed to access the space for a certain period of time, say like 8 hours a week or something. So you can go there and just work on whatever you do. You have a table, you put the laptop up, and you can work. But what's interesting there is that there is sort of this it's a difficult word. Serendipity happening. So there might be someone working across from your table, and you have a coffee break, and you strike up a conversation, and you might get sort of new inspiration or a new contact or something that might evolve into actually a partnership in business or something. So what's interesting is there's these local sort of hubs of collaborative spaces. But the hub is actually a global concept as well. Like the hub, in particular, all these centers, like the hub Zurich, it operates by itself. So they have to make sure that they earn their own living, like that it's profitable, the business. They have to, get the fees of the people who come there. But there's this global hub network as well. And the interesting thing is, so you get people who work on their startup ideas. But then when they become successful locally, then it's really easy for them to have like touch points elsewhere in the world. So if I develop my idea in Zurich and it actually works out, then I can go to Hub San Francisco and immediately I have an access to local people there. And it's great for sort of then growing my idea in other places. So this is an interesting concept for me because it combines this sort of the internet, the virtual, with the physical. And it's not sort of separate events anymore. Like, the event here, I mean, there are lots of people who come here, and there's a dinner, so you have like a physical event and you have physical connections. But in Switzerland, we also have like these events now, but they're kind of a bit disjoint. It's like people just come there for the event, they just listen in and then they disappear again. While here, you sit there, you work, it's sort of more every day. And I think that's an interesting change on this concept of networking and what it means. So I just want to quickly go over this. So these are just some impressions of actually the Hub Zurich. It's a very nice space. And so they have like these two spaces, and one of them is the interaction space where people work, and the other one is more the presentation space. And the Hub members themselves, there's always someone there during the day that is the host for the day, and he knows all the people that come in and out. And so he's also actively making connections. So if he sees like, oh, I see a certain similarity in projects, he can sort of actively make that networking happening. And also during the day, he will then, these people will prepare events. So there's sort of an event track. And what's specific about the Hub is they focus on social entrepreneurs. So the common theme is there that you want to have a social impact with your business. So they're trying to focus a bit down. In the citizen space, it's like everybody's welcome, but in Hub Zurich, it's like they select actually people where they see that it's a social entrepreneur topic. So because they want to make sure that it's people who are sort of on the same page. So I talked about this already. So there, in these events, interesting enough, we had one event where Tesla Motors, which is originating from here, they presented to the people at the Hub. And in the same evening, it was called, the event was called The Future of Transportation. They also had a Swiss company presenting their their transportation solution, which is e-bikes. So this actually makes a nice transition to another innovation which is happening. So Henk, please join me up here. This is actually the e-push. And it's actually the latest project of our founder, Henk. Yeah, please, Henk, tell us a bit about your ePush.
This is a bicycle. How many of you
Want the microphone?
bike?
You want the microphone?
We're going to, next Thursday is Bike to Work, huh? How many of you use a bicycle? Not. You really should. And with this, you know, the world is flat. This is a little trailer which has a electric motor. It's like, you know, all the components from an electric bicycle, but you can connect this to your bicycle. You can, any bicycle, you can connect in minutes. You, without any tools, you will be able to connect it to your bicycle, and then you have an electric bicycle which pushes you. Hence the word ePush. This one has been developed at CERN. Believe it or not, it's a long time ago that I left CERN, but I got, there's a club at CERN which is called the Solar Club, where we also look at innovative projects in solar energy. And we have a little bicycle section there, and I met Robert, who is the mechanical engineer of the AMS project. Now the AMS project is a physics experiment in space. And they are anxiously waiting, Professor Ting and the people who work from AMS, to get the last but one space shuttle up, the Endeavour. It was postponed already 3 times. Now, hopefully it will go up to the International Space Station next week. So this is just a spin-off of AMS. And, you know, it took us several years to develop because, you know, to pull something is very easy, but to push something is very difficult. And the secret behind it is that it pushes down, so you get stability. And I just, a few days ago, I went up to do my old loop, you know, the Sand Hill Road. I waved to the venture capitalists that they were not there. And, you know, go up to the loop, which is a very tough ride when you are in your 70s. And with the ePush, you know, you can just go at 25 kilometers an hour, just like there is no hill. So I suggested to Tesla, when you buy a Tesla, to get an ePush visit. I don't know if that will work. Okay, well, this is not something of my slides. But why you didn't put my slides in there? Okay, you have to do it without. I just briefly have mentioned the characteristics of the ePush. It only weighs 8 kilos, and you can take it on the plane. It folds, and you can just. I traveled with it to several countries, and I'm now here in Silicon Valley to find maybe some angel who would like to help us with the project, because we are just at the stage that the development is finished, and we are now trying to build 50 for a pilot market. And of course, there are millions and millions of bicycles around the world, and you can see that this is substantially cheaper than an electric bicycle. And a lot of people love their bicycle. You can also put panniers on it, so you can put luggage on it. In fact, I had the idea a few years ago when I did Berlin-Copenhagen by bicycle, which is 650 kilometers. And it's not very hilly, but there is wind. There's a wind blowing from the northwest, and I went from Berlin to Copenhagen, not from Copenhagen to Berlin. So you can see that then you start dreaming to have a little assistance, and this is the one. So if you have any ideas, to just let me know. I have also some little papers about it. And I have my business card, and you can look at our website, evelocity.com. And thank you very much for this.
I think we have time for one question, if there is one. No, you can stay afterwards and talk to the speakers. Thanks to all our speakers. Thank you.